Hey guys, Nicolette here with Insomniac Media. Today we're talking to Ruth Carter. Ruth is a lawyer, a speaker, a writer, and if you're interested in conducting a really legal flash mob, Ruth is who you want to talk to. So tune in. It's actually a really fun episode. You're going to love it. All right, so Ruth, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career. I mean, you do a lot of really interesting things and they span. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a licensed attorney based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and a lot of my law career has been an organic extension of things I just do in my life. So I was a blogger in law school, and so I had to learn how to do that without getting myself in trouble. So now, as an extension of that, I also do IP and internet law. I started my own law firm right out of law school, so I had to learn about business law in order to do that properly. So now I also do business law. Also in law school, I started doing flash mobs, and I was the designated killjoy in our group who knew how to look up laws. So I basically invented the area of flash mob law, and that's just kind of what I do. Whatever issue I have in my own life eventually gets woven into part of my practice.
That's awesome.
All right, so hold on. I want to talk about your book, but can you just, for those who don't know, can you tell us can you tell us about flash mob law for a second?
Yep.
Okay, so you know what flash mobs are. Back when they started, like the unexpected people dancing in the street, wearing their underwear on public transportation, things like that. Yeah, I do those. And so I'm the person who sits back while we're planning and thinks, how many ways could this go wrong? Or what could we be accused of doing wrong? And then plan accordingly. Like when we did the Zombathalon, where we dressed up like zombies and scared people along a popular running trail in Phoenix, I was the one who had to say, don't touch anybody because that's assault and battery.
So basically, if anybody wants to have any sort of public display of, I don't know, mobbing, they should come to you and make sure they're doing it right.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, if your hobby involves shenanigans, I can help you do it properly.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what are some of the ones you've been involved with? Because this is it's really intriguing to me.
Yeah, I'm actually, we have like so many things I want to talk about, but I gotta stop here.
Yeah, I like the zombie one. I like yeah, I have to say I like the underwear one. That's awesome too. What are some of the other ones you've been involved with?
Okay, so every year there's the global no pants subway ride. So I've done every one since 2009. So I have had to look up the decency laws.
Right.
We did a Living Where's Waldo game, which was a lot of fun, where everyone dressed up like Waldo-esque, but not quite. And then we had one person in the official Waldo costume. And then we were just all in an area at the same time. And people were very confused. It was fantastic. We've done that a couple of times. We've done a couple of pranks. So our flash mobs are like the bigger group things. And then our pranks are like just our core group. So we've done things like we've carried a body bag through a mall while wearing corner shirts. We welcomed a stranger back at the airport. We've done some pretty fun stuff over the years.
I would like to join. This sounds like fun. How do I get involved? Where do I sign up?
Well, improvaz.com is our website. You can see what we're up to next, or look up. I would start by looking up if someone does the no pants subway ride where you live. Those are probably the people who are also doing other shenanigans in your community.
Yeah, unfortunately, in New York City, like we're right outside of New York City, I don't know if anyone would even notice.
That's where it started. It's get connected with Improv Everywhere. They started the whole thing.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. All right. Well, Ruth, you recently you published a book recently, The Legal Side of Blogging. So you're a blogger, you're a lawyer. Let's talk a little bit about the inspiration behind that book and some of the key points that you address in there in terms of, advice for bloggers even.
Sure. So, yeah, the books came out of the issues I was dealing with, and it actually started with a blog series that I did about how your blog can get you sued, fired, arrested, or killed. And it just grew out of that. So intellectual property issues with copyrights and trademarks. How do you use other people's content? When can you use other people's content? How do you collaborate with people properly? How can you get fired because of your blog? Because if you are an at-will employee, even if what you're doing is completely legal and it's on your own time, you're not representing your company, if the people you work for don't like it, they can just fire you for it, and you have no recourse unless your contract gives it to you, which if it was a contract written by me, it doesn't. And then there are actually some countries where you can be killed for certain things that you might put on your blog, like homosexuality, witchcraft, opposing the government. Not in the US. I guess treason is punishable by death, but it would be hard to make the jump from a blog to treason, but could it happen? I'm sure someone can make the argument.
So, but you know what, you mentioned, how to use other people's content, and you reminded me of something. I was thinking about, something that happened where I was speaking to some editors and they were very nervous about using press releases. And actually, I'm in a lot of, writing groups and things like that on social media as well. And there's this big debate going on about press releases, and you can't use the press releases, and how should you be using the press releases? So it just reminded me of that. What are we supposed to be doing with press releases?
So here's the deal with copyright. The only person who can come after you for infringement is the copyright holder. So if they don't know what you're doing, or they don't care, or they're not offended by what you're doing, you're never going to get in trouble. So I've seen lots of times where a company puts out a press release and then the media just uses it word for word. And so given the totality of the circumstances, I wouldn't be surprised if by sending out a press release, if there was like an implied license for you to publish it as written, or at least publish content from it as long as it's accurate.
So now, when you see a lot of people, they take snippets of other people's content and use it, right? That's a pretty common thing, especially in social media. What are some of the things people need to know around that in terms of advice? Like, is there a certain amount they could use? Is only if it, causes harm to their income or something like that? Like what's really the gist people need to understand?
Right. So the gist is you're asking about what's called fair use, which is part of the copyright law.
Yep.
There is no mathematical equation that you can apply to your situation to guarantee whether or not what you're doing is legal or not. I'm sorry, if the law were that clear, we wouldn't need lawyers. So if it went up before a court, they would look at things like how much did you use, what did they create versus what are you doing with it? And the big thing they would look at is what's the impact on the marketplace. So they're asking if somebody was looking for the original and they came to your site instead and they accepted that as a viable substitute, that's a big strike against you and it indicates that you are committing infringement. But if you are doing things like adding commentary, critique, building on it in some way, using it in a educational or news reporting situation, it's more likely to be fair use, because the law did understand that most original works are inspired or built on what has already been done in the past.
Awesome.
So sorry, I can't give you a black and white answer.
No, that's.
But Brian, you mentioned social media, and I wanted to talk a little bit about social media because, businesses today, they create these giant social strategies. And I don't, the last thing I'm thinking of when I'm creating social content is the law. I mean, that's the reality. I'm not, I'm thinking, okay, this is social media. It's different than, let's say, publishing something, but it is publishing something. So what what should we be thinking about from a legal perspective when it comes to social media?
I would look at it just the same way as publishing. The
Yeah.
laws are the same, with the one exception being that we added the Digital Millennium Copyright Act to the copyright law to deal with online infringement situations. But otherwise, the law is the same. So what makes the most sense is to have a clear policy about what you do and don't post online, so that before you hit post, you kind of have your checklist of, did we do X, Y, and Z, to make sure that we're most likely on the right side of the law.
Mm-hmm.
What about things like reposting, like on Instagram or something like that? I mean, that's material that you're kind of crediting to the original creator. So
Yeah.
does that, that's a little bit different, right, than just taking something as your own?
Sure. Like if it's a situation where like someone's posted something on Instagram and you're regramming it, or someone posted on Facebook and you're sharing it and there's the button that says share.
Right.
The rules of the site allow you to do that.
Right.
So the rules of the platform apply. By posting your content to the platform, you've agreed to the terms of service. Now, if you were going to like someone's website, pulling content and putting it on your Instagram, that's a different issue, which could be infringement if you're just copying and giving the attribution. Because a lot of people think they can use anything they find online as long as they give an attribution and a link back to the original. Mm-hmm. And what they might be doing is committing copyright infringement, admitting it, and telling the person about it. I've had my work stolen a number of times, and that's what's happened every time. Something popped up in my analytics of like, oh, someone linked to you. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And then I see it and I'm like, oh, you stole from me.
Yeah.
You can fix that.
that actually happens a lot. One of my friends, actually, they're an author, and one of the books they wrote they released it for free on Amazon for a while, and it actually got published on some site like in, I forgot what country. And she's like, how do I get it down? I'm like, good luck, at that point. But yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Overseas stuff is really hard because like the DMCA doesn't apply to them if the site or server is overseas. So you can like send a takedown, but if they ignore it, are you gonna really go through the effort to sue them and serve them? And
right. And what are you gonna really get out of it? You're gonna spend a lot of money to deal with that.
Exactly.
Now back to sort of, platforms and licensing, we spoke about like Instagram, right? So, and we see like a lot of this being on TikTok where they're invited to sort of, blend videos together. Now, is it pretty much, does the terms of agreement for the users always, usurp, right? Always go in front of the laws because they're agreeing to that consent, or how's it work? And you're shaking your head. So
no, so like TikTok may encourage you to blend videos, but they still, I'm guessing the terms of service say you have to comply with the law and not infringe on another person's rights by doing it. So it's probably up to you to like blend your own videos or videos that either come with the license to use or where you've gotten permission to use, or you can take the gamble and hope that it's fair use, which again is always a gamble. So, TikTok, I'm sure, has absolved themselves, but in their terms of service by saying, like, by posting to our site, you are claiming that you have you own or have the right to use everything you post, and we won't be responsible for anything illegal or inappropriate that you do.
So we're talking about all these kind of issues that come up. What are some of, one or two, some of the most common things you see new, whether it be businesses or independent bloggers, what are some of the most common legal issues they're running into?
One of the ones I still see all the time, and I just got a question about it from my YouTube channel, has to do with images. Somebody, they sent me a question. They said, I've been posting images to my site like candy, and now I realize that I may not have permission to do that. What do I do now? And my suggestion was actually go back into your site, rip out all your photos, and start over using settings that will only show you images that come with a license to use. So that's a big one. And then another one I see all the time is people who don't understand that just because you have freedom of speech in the US and you can basically say whatever you want as long as it's not illegal, it doesn't mean you're not going to have serious repercussions from it. Whether you're going to destroy your reputation in one tweet, like we saw with Justine Sacco, you know, has Justine landed yet, was the hashtag. We saw it with Kathy Griffin with that photo she posted, completely legal. She ran it past her First Amendment attorney, who's like, he was the guy in the People versus Larry Flint movie. Like, it was about him, and like he's that lawyer. He said, like, you're totally legal, and she ended up being accused of potentially conspiracy to assassinate the president. She was on the no-fly list for a while, and everything she did was completely legal. So, and you know, you see situations where someone does a post. I've seen like kids do a post, and suddenly the Secret Service is showing up, being like, you know, you made a post against the president, and we got to make sure that you're not like really planning to kill him. It's like, and this was before like school shootings were common. So, so yeah, like these types of things happen all the time.
So what about, you know, more along the lines of like, what about like Storm Area 51, right? That was a big one recently, which is a fun one.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was hilarious. And I was even like one of the people who like said like, oh yeah, I'm going, knowing full well like, I'm not going, but I'm gonna watch.
Like, exactly. I was like, I'm going, but let's see what happens, you know?
Yeah, there are like criminal laws, like conspiracy to commit a crime or like encouraging people to commit a crime. So, you know, trespassing on government property. So, you know, could there be something like that? Yes. So, I mean, you could, from what I could tell, the government was trying to discourage people from trying to storm Area 51 and saying like, yeah, if you do this, like, we're going to shoot you because that's what we do to people who trespass illegally. So from what I can tell, like nothing, like no criminal charges were brought against anybody. It was just more of a, we're just going to sit back and watch and see what happens and see is anybody bold enough and maybe stupid enough to actually try it to see what happens. And thankfully, at least from what I've heard from the news, no one actually tried it.
Yeah. I think they turned it, if I recall, I think they returned it into like some giant rave party in Las Vegas or something bizarre like that. So.
Yeah, and there was something like for people, they did turn it into some kind of like festival, and like the Area 51 vicinity, or like where the gift shops are.
Yeah.
But so I think when it probably turned into that, probably the government for the most part was like, all right, like we're still gonna watch you people, but we're pretty sure you're innocuous.
Yeah.
So, you know, yesterday I think you did a Twitter chat with Content Marketing Institute, and you know, you were talking about privacy. So, you know, in today's world, where privacy is a buzzword, right? We're hearing all about our privacy and our data and protecting it. You know, so, you know, in your opinion, how do you think we're doing as a whole, right, as a country, when it comes to ethical and privacy concerns that really need to be considered?
Most of the companies that I work with are trying to be ethical, and they come to me and say, hey, like, we want to comply with GDPR. How do we word our contracts and our privacy policy accordingly so that we can do it? I have seen a lot of companies say, oh, we want to comply with GDPR, except the part where you have to like pay money to join the EU-US Privacy Shield, because why pay $1,000 a year on the chance that I have one European resident on my mailing list and there's a breach because we don't do anything except send out an e-newsletter, which that's a business decision, not a legal decision. I totally get it. And this, I see a lot of confusion in companies asking like, okay, we got the GDPR, we got the Canadian law, California's got a law coming out. Can we comply with all these, or are we going to get cross-mogenation and people's heads are going to blow off? So that's a challenge. So from what I can see, companies are trying, for the most part, to comply, or they think that because they're such a small company that they're just exempt, and probably the risk of something bad happening is worth taking versus putting in the time and energy and money to fully comply. And then there's other companies like Facebook and Cambridge Analytics, and turns out Twitter, I just announced that, oh yeah, we were inadvertently using your email and phone numbers that were only supposed to be used for security for targeted ads. Oh, and Marriott, we're sorry, we had a data breach, and hundreds of millions of credit cards and passport numbers and other guest data got out. Oh, and Facebook said, oh, by the way, hundreds of millions of passwords were available in an unprotected document that all of our employees could read. Sorry. So, yeah, so I think for the most part, people
I love how you sum that up, Ruth.
I mean, when I hear about some of these stories, I was like, how could this happen? Like Marriott, like, again, they get a little bit of a pass because they acquired the breach when they bought Starwood, so they may not have known what they were getting till they bought it.
Right.
But still, it's like, how could a hotel think it was okay to collect information like passport numbers and credit card numbers, keep them, and leave them unencrypted? It's like, what? Like, why? Like, if I were a company that had to have access to credit card numbers, I would be dumping those things as soon as I could. Like, save the last 4 digits so you can track the transaction, but otherwise, like, I don't want that information. I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm just surprised that other companies don't always take that approach.
Yeah.
It's interesting because even if you look at like, small sellers, right? They're using third-party software, like whether they're using Shopify or something else, right, to do their online transactions. So it's interesting that they would choose to house these things versus using some online transaction that's neutralizing it. I mean, whoever it is, it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. No, anytime a client calls me, is like, can I give you my credit card number? I'm like, no, I don't want it.
Exactly.
And occasionally I have to have clients' social security numbers for what they're asking me to do for them. I delete it. I get rid of it. Anything on paper, I write over it 17 times. Because I learned from another client I worked on, if you just Sharpie it out, if you hold it up to the light, it's still readable. So you have to take more steps to destroy it. Now you know.
I need to know.
Sharpie, shred, everything. Burn after you shred it, burn it,
Exactly.
Just, eliminate it. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brian, am I forgetting anything? Is there anything else we were thinking about before we started talking to Ruth?
I think we got everything, Ruth. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a lot of fun. I got to tell you, this is one of my favorites.
Mine too. I definitely want you to come back and talk with us more.
Anytime, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Can you share with us your website one more time for our listeners?
Sure. The best place to find me is geeklawfirm.com. That has links to all my socials and all the projects I'm working on right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.